Hello, and welcome to Professional Study Day. This video is going to cover Hillsborough County Schools' policies around emerging technology in the classroom. The first example of this type of technology is generative AI. Throughout this video, we're going to understand how generative AI connects to and supports the district strategic plan, understand how we approach generative AI, and how we have developed policy and implementation guides, and to review some guidelines for student, teachers, and staff use of generative AI. As we look at the four tenets of Hillsborough's strategic plan, academic excellence, supportive organizational culture, exceptional talent, and fiscal and operational responsibility, generative AI has a place in each of these, whether it's to equip teachers and students with skills, provide training for teachers to build these skills and understand how to use them in the classroom, or fostering learning environments that include generative AI and encourage its use. All of these tenets of our strategic plan work with the implementation of generative AI in Hillsborough County Public Schools. So how did Hillsborough County Schools develop guidance on emerging technology, and specifically, in this case, generative AI? This is a timeline of the Generative AI's Governance Council. In the summer and fall of 2024, Hillsborough County Public Schools realized that generative AI was going to be something that would impact our classrooms at that time and in years ahead. A governance council was formed of principals, district leaders, stakeholders, and other groups to make sure that teacher voice, leader voice, and all of the voices of our groups in our district were included. This group went and for the few months researched state and county guidance on how AI had been implemented in other districts around the country. I want to highlight two opportunities that the Governance Council took to meet with students and get the voice of teachers. One, in the fall of 2024, we put on an Innovate K-12 survey to all 5th, 8th, 11th, and 12th grade students and district staff and teachers around the county. Then, in the winter, we met with the Superintendent Student Advisory Committee, a group of high schoolers that are put together to inform district staff on different things going around in the county and the students' perspective of what tools like generative AI could have impact on their learning and the classroom. If we look at the results of those surveys, when we look at student voice, most students were skeptical of the use of AI, wanting to make sure the teachers really understood how to use it in the classroom, but very curious about its impact. They were very optimistic about the potential of it, but the students, along with the staff, had clear desires for guidelines to be put in place for use. Staff also had concerns about ethics, the use of AI on assignments and how that could change the way we handle assignments and learning in our classrooms. There was a strong need for guidance and professional learning, and they wanted to know how they could use it to enhance their efficiency and practice in day-to-day work. Using that, along with the information from the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, the Governance Council began to put together a policy and an implementation guide. That language was presented to the school board, and we received their feedback and their wishes for pieces to add or pieces to continue to elaborate on to make sure that the plan was effective. We'll talk more about resources in a moment, but we understand that once the policy was created, we needed a clear place to put this out where it was easily accessible for teachers. On Staff Hub, there's now an AI SharePoint site, and an AI website is being built for community stakeholders to understand how Hillsborough County Schools will be using generative AI in its classrooms. So this is the school board policy, 2130 on emerging technologies. Right at the top is a human-centric belief. Emerging technologies such as generative AI can support, not replace, human interactions in both our classrooms and our district operations. We want to make sure that teachers, students, and staff remain at the center of learning and decision making. As a teacher in Hillsborough County Public Schools, you may use AI in tons of different ways. What you want to ensure is that you are always a layer between what AI generates and what you use in your lessons with students. Just like YouTube videos, other resources that we access around the internet, best practice is to review those before using them with students. Generative AI is no different. You want to make sure that anytime generative AI is used, you're reviewing the outputs and making sure that they make sense both developmentally and instructionally before using them with students. We'll talk a little bit more about student use of AI, but also in that human-centric belief is that you as a teacher are supervising students as they're using it or giving feedback to students from products that they may use in assignments from artificial intelligence. The district will continue to make sure that we have universal access to these emerging technologies such as generative AI in our classrooms, and that teachers, no matter what school they're at, no matter which grade they teach or which subject they teach, have access to professional learning for these tools and emerging technologies. We want to make sure that that builds the skills of our teachers to understand the implications of these emerging technologies, but also making sure that we're equipping through professional learning our teachers with the skills to vet AI tools and understand how those outputs are benefiting their work, whether it's from a productivity standpoint or an instructional standpoint. Want to make sure that we're employing the skills necessary to use these tools effectively. Also, for our students, we want to make sure that as generative AI and this types of emerging technologies come out, that we continue to build critical and creative skills in our students to use these tools, but not rely on these tools for their learning. So being able to engage those to enhance their innovation and their learning, but not replace their learning. That goes back to that human-centric belief that even though we are using emerging technologies such as generative AI, it cannot replace key learning experiences for students, and it cannot replace that teacher-student interaction and the teacher understanding and building great lessons. Now, as always with emerging technologies, we have to be responsible in the use of them. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a few moments. But making sure that student data privacy is protected, that we're transparent with that use, and that these tools, such as generative AI, align with our standards of academic integrity. Now, this school board policy is one of many documents that was created or edited to begin to approach these emerging technologies that are available in our society. Now, throughout the use of these emerging technologies, Hillsborough County will continue to collaborate with our partners, such as Microsoft, to make sure that the use of these reflects the current innovations that are in our society, but also align with our educational and operational goals for excellence. So let's talk a little bit about academics and generative AI as one of these emerging technologies. We want to build students' knowledge of these systems, processes, and the societal impacts. We want to use these tools responsibly, and we want to build what we call AI literacy, or the skills in our students. And we want instructors to leverage AI-powered programs to support personalized learning and adaptive learning for our students. So what AI concepts should students know today? Well, the state of Florida is putting out new computer science standards that include these AI types of learning. You can see in elementary school, really it focuses around exploring the use, discussing the use of it, and explain kind of how it affects our ability or improves our ability to access and create content. As we move into the middle and high school grades, students should start to learn how to identify characteristics of it, understand the history and how it came about, and describe and use predictive artificial intelligence or generative AI to solve problems or assist them in their work. These benchmarks and standards are ones that can be embedded into all subjects, not just computer science. Many curriculum tools are going to employ generative AI tools, and the district also has generative AI tools that are out there that teachers and students can use. These benchmarks and standards serve as a great foundation for using those approved tools to build these skills in our students. So how should we approach building those skills? We're going to talk about two things here: student use and teacher use. So when we talk about generative AI use guidelines, it's going to be divided into two groups, pre-K to 7th grade and then 8th grade and onward. You may be asking why that dividing line between 7th and 8th grade. Well, most of the tools in the educational technology world, including generative AI, focus around 13 years old as being an age in which students can use these applications on their own or do not require parental permission to create an account. So that's where that line is drawn, right at that 13-year mark, which is around 7th to 8th grade. So we're going to, like I said, talk about pre-K to 7th and then 8th grade and onward. So use guidelines for students using generative AI in our classrooms from pre-K to 7th grade. Here's what students can do. They can learn about AI, and they can access vetted AI-powered educational tools in a supervised manner. We understand that there are going to be tons of AI tools out there, and the district has continued to work to vet and form partnerships with certain AI tools, but we understand there are other ones out there that are fantastic. Key word here is supervised. Students from pre-K to 7th grade in our classrooms should not be using generative AI tools in an unsupervised manner. Vetted AI tools, which we'll talk about at the end of the video, are ones in which student data can be put in and be used inside of. What students should not be doing are accessing using Gen AI tools, including the vetted applications, in an unsupervised manner. So from pre-K to 7th grade, the key here is they can learn about AI, they can begin to start using skills and generative AI in their work, but it must be for a clear instructional purpose, and it must be in a supervised manner where the teacher is supervising that use inside of the classroom. As we move to 8th grade and above, students can access generative AI tools vetted by the district with parental and teacher permission. There are going to be some parental permission forms around AI that are going to be going out in the new school year. Also, they're able to use these tools in what we consider an unsupervised manner. So they can access these tools and use them, but they should not be using them in a way that violates data privacy, academic integrity, or digital citizenship. They should also not be using generative AI tools in our classrooms for personal use. So these are 5 facets that we found really bring responsible student use of generative AI to the fore. Starting off, students should always seek clarity. Don't trust the results that come out of generative AI. Verify them. Generative AI tools often are what we call hallucinate, because they want to provide you with an answer. They don't want to say, I don't know. So they will work to provide an answer regardless of accuracy. So students should always seek clarity in the responsible use of AI. They must critically think. A study from MIT just came out recently where students that wrote the beginning of an essay on their own and then used generative AI to help edit and revise it had the same amount of mental and brain activity doing that type of assignment than before generative AI even existed. However, if students had generative AI write the paper first and then edited it themselves, the brain activity showed a marked drop-off. So we need to make sure that students, when they're using AI, are continuing to critically think and build those critical thinking skills. As always, students must protect their personal information when using generative AI. District vetted tools that we'll talk about at the end are safe for student data, but any other AI tool that a student interacts with, they should be protecting their personal information. One of the big things around generative AI use is as they're using generative AI to help them in an assignment or build their knowledge, they should document that process. Document what prompt they use. What result did they get from that prompt or that tool? How did they prompt the tool to edit or give them additional information? By critically going through the process of using a tool, that builds their ability to seek clarity and make sure that the responses they're getting from generative AI are useful to their work. Last, citing AI appropriately. While there aren't standards yet from the MLA or APA on how to cite AI tools, by documenting the process of prompts and by documenting which tools they use, they're making sure to attribute the parts of their work that they got from generative AI to their instructors and their teachers. So those 5 facets all equal the responsible use of generative AI from our students. So as teachers, here's some considerations that you can think about when using AI tools. First off, set clear expectations around its use. Foster classroom dialogue. One of the things that generative AI cannot do is replicate personal experience. So when you're designing learning activities for your students, have them bring in that personal experience or their own personal thoughts to the discussion and foster that classroom dialogue. As generative AI tools become more pervasive in our use and in classrooms, having those types of Socratic conversations and Socratic learning experiences will continue to make sure students build critical thinking skills. Make sure that you're choosing appropriate AI tools in developmentally approved ways. Like any tool in a classroom, using generative AI is all about the why. Why am I using this? Am I using it to unpack a standard? Am I using it to create more differentiated or adaptive learning experiences? Analyze why you're using the AI tool and make sure it's developmentally appropriate. And then make sure as you're observing your students using AI, especially in pre-K to 7th grade, evaluate their use carefully. Now, we talked about setting clear expectations, and this is a very key piece with Leon Fers's AI scale. This is an example of how you can lay out a level of AI tools and how the students can use AI tools in their work. By setting expectations, you know that students will be able to understand the context in which they can use artificial intelligence. So what generative AI apps are approved or vetted by the district? Here are the approved Gen AI apps that student data can be used in. Magic School, Amira Learning, Copilot, Microsoft Reading Progress, our New Lines, Packback, and Quizzes, which is now actually called Waybridge. That doesn't mean these are the only applications that you can use in your classroom, but these are the only ones that student data can be used in. Now, as you continue on your journey of using generative AI tools in the classroom, Hillsborough County has created an artificial intelligence page in Staff Hub. It's available under the resources section, and this is where you can go to get the most up-to-date information on policies, tools that have been vetted and approved for use, and also review our AI implementation guide, which provides additional details on how to use artificial intelligence in the classroom. Thank you for your time, and we hope you enjoy the rest of Professional Study Day.